Indigenous people's right to vote is often associated with the 1967 referendum. What people don't know is that Indigenous people had the right to vote prior to 1967 and even had voting access prior and shortly after Federation. Each state and territory prior to 1901 had governed their own rules and regulations on how Indigenous people were able to exercise their right to vote. If a male was over the age of 21, he was considered to be a subject of the Crown, enabling him the right to vote. South Australia did not just allow Aboriginal men the right to vote, but also allowed Aboriginal women the right to vote too. As this animation demonstrates, Indigenous peoples had varying degrees on how they were able to exercise their right to franchise. But in some cases, for example Point Macleay Mission, they had a polling booth installed on-site in 1890. In other cases, Indigenous peoples in New South Wales and Queensland were able to vote in state elections. Electoral rolls from the early 1900s prove this. Up until 1962, rules on allowing Indigenous Australians to vote was a bit messy. For example, in 1949, the Australian Electoral Act added that any Indigenous person who served in the military were entitled to vote. But it wasn't until the Menzies government in 1962 amended the Australian Electoral Act to entitle all Indigenous Australians this right. It took 3 years for the amendment to be considered throughout Australia, Queensland becoming the last in 1965. It is important to recognise the right to franchise happened outside of the 1967 referendum, and that prior and after Federation, many Indigenous people were exercising their right to vote to create a better Australia for all Australians. For more information, check out the Centre of Independent Studies website. And don't forget to like, follow and subscribe.